What is going on, hybrid shooters? It's Jason Vong, and in this video, we're gonna take a look at the timeline performance of Adobe Premiere Pro running on the new 6-core MacBook Pro 2018. There are a lot of reviews and tests out already, but they're primarily focused on comparing export times, which is a great way to see the performance boost from one machine to another. But what I think is more important than that is timeline performance. Because that's where all the creativity happens. We cut up the clips, we paste them together, we add a cool effect and put it to a dank beat. So we would like to know if that experience is smooth or not. Because if it's not smooth, then we would be chucking this out the window and getting a Windows laptop. But seriously, we are willing to put up with a little longer export time so long as our editing session goes uninterrupted. So who is really gonna benefit from watching this test? Mainly content creators who are shooting 4K videos with their DSLR or mirrorless cameras like the Sony Alpha or the Panasonic Lumix cameras. If you guys are dealing with Canon RAW files or Red RAW files, then there are a lot of already great tests out there from the big tech guys like TLD Today, MKBHD, Mondo Bytes, and Max Europe, so go check them out. In the past, whenever I'm dealing with 4K video files from my Sony Alpha cameras on my 2015 and 2017 MacBook Pro, the timeline playback is god-awful. I would have to create 720p GoPro Cineform proxy files in order to have a smooth timeline experience. But the issue with that is not only does it take up a lot more hard drive space, but a lot of time to create those proxy files. For somebody like me who cranks out 4K YouTube content on the daily, having to wait for the proxies to render out will kill my motivation to even work on it. Again, a little longer export time would not be a big deal to me just because the creative process would have been finished by then. I can go ahead and do something else while I wait for the video to export. Anyways, let's get into the test. Alright, so here's what I got to work with. The brand new MacBook Pro 2018, the latest and greatest from Apple, with the 6-core 8th gen Core i7 with the AMD Radeon Pro 560X. Now I am aware of the thermal throttling issue with the i9, so it's a good thing that I grabbed the i7 to test instead. And just for comparison's sake, I have the Windows equivalent to this, the Razer Blade 15, also having the 6-core 8th gen Core i7 with the GTX 1070. Now this is something that I am planning to upgrade to from my Razer Blade 14. Shout out to my friend and longtime subscriber Chris Vernal for loaning this to me. And I might as well throw this into the mix. The Razer Blade 14, which is what I'm currently using for the last 4 months. And it's great, it's fantastic, it's rocking the quad-core i7 with the GTX 1060. So we're gonna be running 3 different tests. Test number 1 will focus on a basic edit plus playback, typical YouTube videos that I would make on a daily basis ranging from 2 to 10 minutes long that doesn't require rigorous or intricate cuts. Test number 2, I'll focus on a multi-video layer timeline plus playback. I'll show you guys a 4x4 stress test in which I put 4 4K videos on the same screen with color grade and some effects. After that, I'll show you guys a real-world 4K wedding ceremony multi-cam timeline playback. As for our last test, we'll be taking a look at a real-world wedding highlight edit with 4K and 1080p footage mixed into one timeline. If you can't tell by now, I'm a wedding filmmaker, so I edit a lot of weddings, which actually serves as a pretty good test for those of us who edit a lot of client work. Alright, so test number 1. We have a 2-minute timeline here, all 4K videos shot on the Sony a7 III with minor color grading in post mixed in with some text and photos. Now all the source files are loaded onto the laptop's SSD. Here we're playing back at half resolution and it always starts off great. All the laptops are playing back the footage smoothly until we get to this part where a text fades in. That's when the MacBook Pro starts choking up every single time we ran this test. Both Razers may have had a few drop frames, but it was never a big deal. Now, out of curiosity, we exported the XML and loaded the same project onto Final Cut Pro 10. And, you probably guessed it, it had no issues whatsoever. Playback was incredibly smooth, and mind you, this is with background rendering turned off. Now, a few days after we ran this test, literally hours before Throttlegate, Adobe dropped a brand new update, Premiere Pro CC 12.1.12, which promises a performance boost when working with H.264 files on a Mac. So I got excited, I installed the update, and lo and behold, it actually worked. I played back the same project at half res, and there were no hiccups on the new MacBook Pro, even at that same text part. Like, finally, Adobe, what took you so long? We've been needing this update for ages. So yes, I am very, very happy with this performance boost, but, I'm gonna leave this giant but here because we're gonna circle back to this. Folks, we're still on test number 1. This video is far from over. Let's go ahead and quickly wrap up this initial test and move on to the next one. Even though we're more focused on the timeline playback, we still wanted to know the export times. Prior to the latest Premiere Pro update, the Mac exported this project out in 6 minutes and 39 seconds, while surprisingly, both the Razer 14 and 15 finished at the same time. 4 minutes and 22 seconds, almost 2 minutes and 17 seconds faster than the Mac. After the latest Premiere Pro update, we actually saw a significant improvement on all 3 machines. The Mac exported this project in 2 minutes and 42 seconds. Hot damn, almost 4 minutes faster compared to the previous version. The Razers now show a difference between each other. The 15 got this video out in 2 minutes and 6 seconds, while the 14 got it done in 2 minutes and 19 seconds, shaving almost 2 minutes compared to the last tests. And just for poops and giggles, Final Cut Pro 10 got the same project out in 1 minute and 18 seconds. I'm going to let that sink in for you. Yes, this is what background rendering turned off. Okay, so that was a little cheating because I cut that project on the Razer Blade 14 and we're just playing back that same project on different machines. So what I did was I edited my latest YouTube video on the MacBook Pro 2018 from scratch using the latest Premiere Pro update, and I had a pretty smooth experience. And all the source files were coming from the Samsung T1 SSD drive. It was great. The timeline mainly consisted of a lot of 4K video files with a little bit of 1080p 120 on the top layer. No proxy files needed whatsoever. Again, very promising. But we still gotta circle back to this but, by the way, so hang on tight. Alright, test number 2. We're gonna look at a multi-video layer timeline. Essentially a multi-cam sequence. We're gonna start off with an extreme 4x4 stress test in which we place 4 4K videos on the same screen with a color grade adjustment layer on top. One layer will have a Gaussian blur effect and the other layer will have a stabilized effect. All source files are loaded into the laptop's SSD, played back at half resolution. Prior to the latest update, none of the laptops got to the end without massive lag. However, when we did the same test on Final Cut Pro on the latest MacBook, that thing did not break a sweat. But the Razer Blade 14 though, the fans kicked in so hard I swear it could be the next Mavic Pro 2. After the update though, all of the laptops actually got through the whole timeline with little drop frames. However, I should note that I got inconsistent results with the Razers. Sometimes they played the whole thing back just fine, sometimes it would stutter halfway through. I should also note that if you played the sequence at any point that is not from the beginning, all of the laptops would stutter right away. So obviously that was a very extreme test, we just wanted to see the limits of the machines. Next, I'm going to show you a real-world multi-cam 4K wedding ceremony playback with at least 3 videos on 3 different layers. Now on the Razers, it played back the ceremony at full and half res with no issues. Now here's where we come back to that but. On the MacBook Pro, whether it's full res, half res, even quarter res, it would stutter at different points of the timeline. On top of that, there are times where the audio just cuts out for 3 seconds, and this was happening on a very consistent basis. I discovered this issue while I was cutting a multi-cam wedding speech sequence. You know, I thought with the update, everything would be peachy. I would have no issues cutting this wedding, right? And then this happened. It's just very annoying trying to play back and see my cut, but instead getting choppy playback and losing audio here and there. So you're probably wondering, well, what the hell happened? Didn't you say you had no issues cutting your 8-minute YouTube video? Why is this sequence any different? Yes, I didn't have any issues with the 8-minute YouTube video, but at max, I only stacked 2 4K videos on top of each other. When you start having 3 or 4, for whatever reason, that's when the issue occurs. Quick thing to note though, stacking text and adjustment layers will not cause this issue. It's only when you stack 3 or more 4K videos on top of each other. Now, if anybody out there that can run a similar test on their latest MacBook Pro, please let me know in the comments down below your experience with this. But until then, to prove my point about the issues having 3 or more 4K videos stacked, I opened up the last wedding high that I edited. At most, I had 2 videos on top of each other, and it played back fine. It did stutter a little bit when I got to 3 layers, but right after it got out of there, it did okay. So if you're planning on using Adobe Premiere Pro on the new MacBook Pros and you're dealing with a 4K multi-video layer sequence like this, you might want to consider creating those proxy files still. If you're dealing with 1 or 2 4K layers at most, then you should be fine. And just because I filmed the test, here are the export time results for this particular wedding highlight. On the MacBook Pro, it took 9 minutes and 48 seconds, the Razer Blade 15 took 4 minutes and 32 seconds, and the Razer Blade 14 took 5 minutes and 12 seconds. Through all of this, I still gotta hand it to Adobe for finally working their magic and getting Premiere to perform better on the Macs. Yes, I've even seen a massive improvement on the timeline using Premiere Pro on the 2015 MacBook Pro, even though the export time is significantly slower compared to today's machines. Without a doubt, Final Cut Pro 10 on a Mac will outperform Premiere on any Windows laptops. With that said, if you're like me who prefer to stay with the Apple Mac ecosystem but refuse to switch over to Final Cut Pro 10, you'll be happy to know that Premiere Pro actually runs a lot better with the latest update on the Macs. However, again, if you're dealing with a big project that requires a multi-layer 4K video timeline, then you might want to consider creating those proxy files still. If you're considering the Razers or any Windows equivalent laptop, the timeline performance on Premiere is very solid throughout. Render and export time will still beat out Premiere on a Mac by a long shot. By the way, guys, I don't normally make videos like this. I usually make videos on hybrid shooting with Sony Alpha cameras. So if you're interested in learning how to better use your Sony cameras for photography and videography, definitely subscribe to this channel. To start you off, here are 5 Sony Alpha hacks you need to know. And let me know in the comments down below if you want to see more laptop comparisons by me. Guys, thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you guys in my next video. Peace.